This week on Christian World News, U.S. President Obama seeks to widen the war against the Islamic ISIS army. Iraqi Christians say that if ISIS isn't defeated, they'll be driven from the Middle East. Plus, pouring fuel on the fire. The president compares ISIS to the Crusades. Scholars say that's a huge error. And behind the scenes of a new movie opening this Valentine's Day weekend. Stay tuned for a sneak peek with the writer and star of the film, Old Fashioned. Widening the war on ISIS. Welcome to Christian World News, everyone. I'm Wendy Griffith. George Thomas is on assignment. President Obama has asked Congress for military authorization in the fight against ISIS in Iraq and Syria.
Now, make no mistake, this is a difficult mission, and it will remain difficult for some time. But our coalition is on the offensive. ISIL is on the defensive, and ISIL is going to lose.
The president says he's not calling for the deployment of U.S. ground combat forces, and his proposal limits the use of military force to 3 years. The head of the Catholic Chaldean Church in Kurdistan says Iraqi Christians have little time left. According to the BBC, Archbishop Bashar Warda says military ground action is needed because there is no other way to protect the Christians there from extinction. Meanwhile, a new religious freedom group says Christians and other religious minorities in Iraq will face genocide if the Islamic State is not defeated and removed. In a report released this week, the 21st Century Wilberforce Initiative says Iraq's ancient faith communities are now facing existential crisis and genocidal onslaught. Chief International Correspondent Gary Lane talked earlier with the Wilberforce Initiative president.
Randall Everett is president of the 21st Century Wilberforce Initiative. Pastor Everett, thanks for joining us today. And I know your team just got back from Iraq. You interviewed dozens of internally displaced Christians, Yazidis, and others. What disturbed you the most about what you heard from them?
Well, we really believe there's genocide against the Christians and other religious minorities like the Yazidis. They've been there. The legend tells us that the Apostle Thomas was the one who brought the gospel to them, and that the light of Christianity has been there throughout the centuries. And unless something dramatic happens, there'll be no Christians left in Iraq in just a few years. There were 1.5 million there about a decade ago, and now there are less than 300,000, and probably among the 300,000, a majority of those are in these displacement centers.
Well, let's get into some of the atrocities. There have been reports that Islamic State has beheaded Christian children. However, I have numerous sources in Iraq who told me they have seen no evidence of that. What did you learn about that? What's the truth?
We didn't hear any stories of that, and we tried to document all the stories that we had heard. There were 2 children that were killed by a mortar that came from ISIS when they came into their community, their village. There have been others who were killed. Now, among the Yazidis in Sinjar, there were much more horrible things that happened. Of course, the Christians were given 2 hours to abandon their homes, their jobs, their places where they had lived, and they suffered horribly. But the Yazidis, we heard more about murders and suicides and kidnapping. They seem to receive the brunt of their violence.
And your team visited the NPU, the Nineveh Protection Unit. Tell us, what is that group and what's its purpose?
Well, it really reminded me of the American Revolutionary Army. We were there the first day of their drills. They had just come together. It's about 500 people. These are all displaced people as well. They were driven from their homes. It's an all-volunteer army. Of course, they're unemployed. They're people who are living in exile themselves. Some of them were older and many out of shape, and some were younger and fit. All kinds of vocational backgrounds, physicians or teachers or farmers. But they've come together to really develop what might be more like a National Guard. They'll never be able to retrieve the lands for themselves. But if the lands are liberated, then perhaps they can go back and help to protect their own people when they get back.
So finally, what should be done to prevent this extinction that they face, that your report says the minorities in Iraq face, religious minorities?
Well, 100% of them said they want to go home. And so if there was a way to provide a province for them in Nineveh for the Christians to return back to there and live in a safe environment, that would be the most ideal thing. And for that to happen, then they would need international military support to be able to go back and liberate and protect an area like that. Supporting like the Nineveh Plains unit that we mentioned, that would help them as well. If they aren't able to go back, then they said they'll leave Iraq because they can't continue to live in the deplorable situation that they're in now. Many living in just little shacks or containers with no drinkable water, no electricity, in horrible situations now. So if they don't get some help, then they'll end up leaving. So we want to also offer humanitarian assistance to them at this time in their lives.
Okay, Pastor Randall Everett of the 21st Century Wilberforce Initiative. We'll continue to pray for them. I'm sure you will too. Thank you for your insights.
You bet. Thank you. It's an honor to be with you.
Thanks, Gary. And you can read the full report on persecution of Iraq's Christians and learn more about the 21st Century Wilberforce Initiative at our webpage. That's at cbnnews.com. President Obama's recent remarks comparing the Christian Crusades to the atrocities of ISIS have created quite an uproar. Here's what he said at the National Prayer Breakfast.
And lest we get on our high horse and think this is unique to some other place, remember that during the Crusades and the Inquisition, people committed terrible deeds in the name of Christ. In our home country, slavery and Jim Crow all too often was justified in the name of Christ.
Scholars say that remark is not only inflammatory, it's historically inaccurate. Recently, I spoke with Dr. Corney Becker. He's Dean of the Department of Biblical Studies and Christian Ministry at the College of Arts and Sciences at Regent University. He said those remarks are revealing about the president's understanding of Islam and its goals. We just heard President Obama say that Christians should not get on their high horse and judge Islam by ISIS activities. And he used the Crusades as an example. Was this an appropriate example?
It's always interesting to me. I think the Crusades might be the best known portion of Christian history, but yet maybe the most misunderstood. It was an extraordinary, anachronistic reading of the Crusades. We have to remember that the Crusades were, for the most part, defensive wars from Christianity to stem the tide of Islamic invasion, where ISIS, on the other hand, is an aggressive war to take over the rest of the world.
It seems like the president seems so disconnected from the terror that ISIS is doing. Is he just not getting it? Where's the disconnect?
It's interesting, the word Crusades is not a word that was used during the time of the Crusades. It's in actual fact a term that was invented in the beginning of the 20th century with the rise of liberal ideologies and liberal politics. And it's very clear to me that the president's understanding of Islam and the Crusades tend to be flawed. He sees it as part of a critique on Western colonialism, but of course that's not what it was. It was a defense of Christianity to the invasions of Islam.
Well, both Islam and Christianity have, of course, spread throughout the world. Compare the way Islam has spread with how Christianity has spread.
Right at the beginning of the start of Muhammad and Islam, Islam always spread through war and violence. And even if you were to look in the life of Muhammad himself, and I know this is often something that nobody wants to talk about, but he goes back to his birthplace and conquers this through violence. Yet we find the opposite in the life of Jesus. There's not a single account in the life of Jesus where he called for violence, but quite the opposite, in that he would say, love your enemies, bless those who curse you.
Well, it's interesting because the Quran, as we know, has many verses that say it's okay to harm and kill the unbelievers, the infidels. Is there anything in the Christian Bible, in the New Testament, that says that we can do the same to unbelievers of Christianity?
Wendy, quite the opposite. And this is what Jesus said. He said, you have heard an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. And you can always stop and just think about it. In a world like that, nobody's left with any eyes or any teeth. Jesus said, but I tell you, if somebody strikes you on the one cheek, turn the other cheek. And of course, Jesus lived this. Lived this. He died ultimately.
That's right. That's amazing. Well, what is the church's role in this great battle of these two civilizations?
What an extraordinary opportunity we have as the church right now, Wendy. Christianity has the message of redemption. In my mind, in Islam, there is no possibility for redemption. But here we have the opportunity as the church not only to proclaim clearly what Christ offers, but to show the way to salvation and ultimately peace.
What do you think about what King Abdullah in Jordan is doing right now? A lot of people are having a hard time understanding why Muslims are now killing Muslims, but you say this is not new.
This has always been true. This war of Muslims against Muslims is something that was there right from the beginning. What an extraordinary time we live in. Yeah. And one of the things that I'm hoping that's happening in the horror of what ISIS is that the eyes of the Muslim world, of the Arab world indeed would be opened so that they would see what's really going on.
Amen. Dr. Becker, thanks so much for being with us.
Always a joy, Wendy.
Coming up, for months, the world has demanded a Nigerian terrorist group bring back our girls. Now, some have escaped. Hear their stories of surviving captivity under Boko Haram.
Hello, I'm Terry Newsom. Did you know there are more than 148 million orphans in the world today? 148 million. But it was 3 little girls that taught me about the plight of orphans. 8 years ago, my husband and I spent nearly a month immersed in the daily activities of a Ukrainian orphanage as we waited to adopt 3 sisters. I saw firsthand the utter loneliness, the pain of rejection, and the overwhelming desire to be loved. That experience changed me forever. And out of it grew a ministry from my heart called Orphans Promise. Today, we're helping orphans and vulnerable children in more than 50 countries worldwide. Thousands of children are now in safe homes. They're being educated, and they're learning life skills. I'm asking you to join with me and become family to these children. Will you call the number on your screen right now? Because every child deserves a chance to be happy.
Inside every child is a hero, a leader, a friend to others, someone who helps out, who does the right thing, who dreams of what they can be, but they still need our help.
What should I do? What should I say? How should I feel?
That's where Superbook comes in. It provides moral and spiritual truths through situations children can relate to, teaching God's Word to the children you love. Join the Superbook DVD Club and receive Superbook's newest episodes as they're available, plus 2 copies to share with others, all for your gift of only $25. Get Superbook today and watch the miracles happen.
Nigeria is postponing its presidential election. The move comes as violence caused by radical Islamic militant groups like Boko Haram continue to sweep the nation. The election was set to happen February 14th, but Nigeria's Electoral Commission says they will be pushed back now to March 28th because voter safety cannot be guaranteed. In the past 10 days, an offensive from Chad and Nigeria has forced Boko Haram from a dozen towns and villages. More military strikes are planned. Well, this week marks 300 days since the Islamic terror group snatched more than 270 girls from a boarding school in Nigeria. Despite a worldwide outcry and military action, most of the girls are still missing, but a few managed to escape. Dale Hurd has the incredible story.
15-year-old Abigail John was held by Boko Haram for more than 4 weeks. Her face is hidden for her protection.
They told us that if we do not convert to Islam, they will slit our throats. They asked the healthy ones to perform the Islamic rites, while we, the sick ones, did not perform the rites.
John was among 3 girls who recently escaped from Boko Haram.
The way they spoke to us, they had no intention of releasing us. They said we would be married off as soon as we got well, and that they would marry us to their members who were single. We never thought we would regain our freedom.
20-year-old Dorcas Aiden was held captive for 2 weeks last September. She admitted that she denied her Christian faith and pretended to become a Muslim to stay alive.
They are teaching them Islamic. Some say they are married them. They are saying that they are training them. And they are showing us inside the laptop every day. And they are showing us the way they are killing people, killing soldiers, and they say if they catch you ladies, they will marry the ladies, and if they catch men, they will kill men.
The local priest is Father Maurice Kwairanga.
Some of them, it's very painful for them to go through this process of even telling what happened to them. But gradually, they're able to open up and to talk freely, to feel accepted, and to feel that the world has not turned its back on them. 219
girls are still missing. Experts say the fight with Boko Haram has killed more than 6,000 civilians last year. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Up next, a movie about true love and romance hits the box office. We go behind the scenes to talk with the star of Old Fashioned.
Hello? Is this thing on? Hey, kids, do you love games? And do you love discovering things? Well, do ya?
Then you're gonna love this. It's the new free Superbook Kids Bible app. You can play games, watch videos, find answers to your questions, and a whole lot more. The new Superbook Kids Bible app. Free downloads available on iTunes and Google Play now.
Hello, I'm Terry Newsom. Did you know there are more than 148 million orphans in the world today? 148 million. But it was 3 little girls that taught me about the plight of orphans. 8 years ago, my husband and I spent nearly a month immersed in the daily activities of a Ukrainian orphanage as we waited to adopt 3 sisters. I saw firsthand the utter loneliness, the pain of rejection, and the overwhelming desire to be loved. That experience changed me forever. And out of it grew a ministry from my heart called Orphans Promise. Today, we're helping orphans and vulnerable children in more than 50 countries worldwide. Thousands of children are now in safe homes. They're being educated, and they're learning life skills. I'm asking you to join with me and become family to these children. Will you call the number on your screen right now? Because every child deserves a chance to be happy.
Pentecost 2015. From the corners of the earth, believers gather in Jerusalem. Walk where Jesus walked. Pray in Gethsemane. Rejoice at the empty tomb. Don't miss messages from over 100 world-renowned speakers and a score of popular worship artists. For more information and to register for the Empowered 21 Global Congress, go to Jerusalem2015.com. This May, Jerusalem.
Well, here in America, it's Valentine's Day weekend. It's a time to celebrate love and relationships. If a movie date is in the works, you don't have to settle for that much-hyped 50 Shades of Grey. There's another movie out about love and romance that critics say will inspire you to believe in true love again.
So you won't be alone with a woman?
Within reason. I don't believe that dating trains us to be good husbands and wives. It trains us to be skilled in the superficial.
Who talks like that?
I do.
Clay Walsh, played by actor and writer Rick Sportswelder, is a former frat boy who comes to Jesus and feels so guilty for his past behavior with women that he makes a vow to keep his distance from the opposite sex until the right one comes along. The only problem is his own righteousness becomes a bit of a brick wall to those around him.
So he has isolated himself from other people, isolated himself ultimately from God even. And it's starting to change him in a not good way. And then Amber comes in and, he runs an antique shop and she rents the apartment above the antique shop. And so they have to meet. And she starts to press in on him.
How come you haven't asked me out yet?
If I do, you start breaking things. Okay.
What inspired you to write this old-fashioned romance?
I was hanging around with a bunch of singles and we all loved film. And we were dating and trying to fall in love and see if you could find a life partner, someone to marry. And we were talking about how none of us, to a person, had ever seen a film that really told our story on screen. And so the very beginning, the genesis of Old Fashioned for me was simply trying to tell the love story that other people I knew were experiencing and were hoping for.
The world wants to know, when are you going to kiss her?
Clay says he will not kiss his wife until their wedding night, until their wedding day.
Just right there till the wedding bells. For Clay specifically, it's important because it's his way of staying on the straight and narrow, of trying to make amends. You know, I'm not trying to earn his salvation, but to make amends for how he has lived in the past. What we can learn from Clay and his approach to this is that however you want to draw those lines, there is wisdom in saying what we do physically matters.
Are you Clay?
Well, you know, any writer, you write what you know. And there are certainly elements of the film that are autobiographical. It's not my life story, but I'm definitely borrowing heavily from my own experiences.
Like his character, Rick became a Christian later in life.
My moral compass was dictated by MTV and pop culture, and I bought into it. But when I read the words of Jesus and the life of Jesus, and when Jesus says, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do," something in me shifted. Right. And it's never been the same.
Your movie, Old Fashioned, comes out on the same weekend as the much talked about 50 Shades of Grey, which has just received an R rating for unusual behavior. How do you go up against a movie that's getting such buzz like that?
I wasn't telling the story to counter any book or any other film. I was simply trying to tell a more beautiful love story that took the idea of honoring God in romance and dating seriously. Now, when we realized the marketing opportunity that was there once our film was done, that clearly was deliberate, because I think it is a unique time to engage the culture in a discussion about what love and romance is.
Dr. Julie Slattery, co-author of Pulling Back the Shades, says although a cultural phenomenon with more than 100 million books sold, 50 Shades of Grey is a dangerous book and movie.
Why should Christian women not read the series and not see the movie?
In 1 Thessalonians, it says clearly, this is God's will for you, that you avoid sexual immorality. And as Christian women, we're constantly asking God, would you guide me? Would you bless me? Would you bless my family? Would you bring me a loving husband? By reading 50 Shades of Grey and things like it, or going to see the movie, you are choosing to take yourself out of God's will.
You talk about 50 Shades of Grey being actually a spiritual book.
We start with the Garden of Eden. We look at Satan saying to Eve, God really doesn't have your best interest in mind. There's another way to achieve what you want. How is 50 Shades of Grey not that? It's whispering to single women, to married women, you know, what you're experiencing, what God has for you is really second rate. What the world offers is much more fulfilling. That's satanic.
Why would you recommend people go see Old Fashioned other than 50 Shades?
It's not fairy tale-ish. In the main character, the man in the movie, Clay, comes from a lot of poor choices, and actually the woman does too. And it's a story not just of romance, but of God's redemption. And many of you that are watching this right now, you have walked through some difficult things. You might feel a tremendous amount of sexual shame, like I could never have a pure relationship. And the movie Old Fashioned really shows you that not only is God's way the best way, but that God redeems us.
Don't even tell me you found Jesus or something.
More like he found me.
Really? In an age where hooking up is practically a national pastime and reality dating shows encourage kissing as many people as possible, the themes in Old Fashioned are completely countercultural. But Rick is hopeful that his movie will at least get the conversation started.
Are we engaging romance with respect? Does virtue matter? Does honor matter? Does integrity matter? What does that look like for you?
Is an old-fashioned courtship possible in 2015?
I believe in a God who is revolutionary. And chivalry can make a comeback if enough people genuinely want it to. If we get tired of getting beaten up by our culture and entertainment that wants to reduce us to physical receptacles. Yes, it is possible. It absolutely is possible. And I believe that a beautiful revolution can happen, but it has to happen in our own hearts.
Chivalry can make a comeback. There's hope for us, ladies. And I've seen the movie twice, and I loved it. You can find more information on Old Fashioned at our website, including where the movie's playing. Plus, we have a special webcast about the debate over movies like Old Fashioned versus 50 Shades of Grey, which also opens this weekend. You don't want to miss that. You can check that out and join the conversation. We'll be right back.
Give me that. Bye. Sure, life is busy, but I found a way to make a huge difference in people's lives. I guess you could say I'm changing the world right here from home. I bring medical supplies and doctors to people in need, and dig wells so that villagers can have clean and safe water to drink. I make it possible to preach the gospel in over 100 countries, including right here in America. And when disaster strikes, I'm there, providing food, thank you, and emergency supplies to give people hope again. Every day, CBN and I are making the world a better place. Here you go. My life is hectic, so I joined CBN through Pledge Express. My bank does all the work, and I know that my gift is being used where it's needed most. So become a CBN partner and join Pledge Express, because you can do a world of good right from where you are. Hi, good morning. Are you ready to get started?
Pat Robertson recently recorded a very special program to answer the question, does God still heal today?
What we're trying to do here, Scott, is to tell people how they can access the power of the living God through Jesus Christ.
Discover the answers and let your faith be encouraged.
And then Jesus spelled out of how we can have healing and how we can have miracles.
In Pat Robertson's latest DVD, Be Healed, you'll learn the biblical basis for healing today, how to exchange anxiety and worry for faith and confidence, the way to pray for your healing and healing for those you love. Plus, meet real people who've experienced the miraculous healing power of God.
The first thing I did was reached out for a lifesaver, and that was God. You know, you can put your trust in medicine, but the ultimate healing is going to have to be God.
Find out the biblical principles that lead to healing in Pat Robertson's latest teaching, Be Healed. Available now.
Washington, D.C. is famous for its museums. Some are dedicated to art, some to history, a couple to air and spacecraft. But soon, as CBN's Paul Strand tells us, the Bible will have its very own museum right in the heart of the nation's capital.
It won't be ready for a couple of years, but construction of the world's largest Bible museum began this week with an act of destruction, ripping away at a building in the way. And for the first time, its designers put on display the finalized artwork of what the $400 million Museum of the Bible will actually look like.
Our idea and our desire is to tell the Bible story in such an engaging way that people will want to spend hours in the museum.
Steve Green's family not only runs the mega business Hobby Lobby, but also owns one of the largest collections of Bible artifacts in the world. Most will find a home in the new museum, along with many high-tech, innovative displays to bring God's Word to life.
When we think of the word museum, sometimes you think of old and dusty, but what we will be doing is making this technologically advanced, where that it's very engaging and interactive, where that somebody could have a customized tour if they wanted to.
The museum is set to open in 2017, just a few hundred yards from the National Mall and the most famous Smithsonian's, like the popular Air and Space Museum. Paul Strand, CBN News, reporting from the future site of the Museum of the Bible.
Thanks, Paul, and nice hat. Well, remember, you can see daily stories from Christian World News on your Facebook page. You can also meet and chat with other Christians around the world and share your thoughts and prayers. Simply go to the CWN Facebook page and just like us, and also follow me on Twitter, Wendy G. CBN. Thanks so much for joining us. Until next week, from all of us here at Christian World News, have a great weekend, and God bless you.